Hello folks, and welcome to the OceanState Cuisine. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys one of my favorite appetizers or snacks of all times. These are called Baked Clam Casinos. This is probably one of the most tastiest clam dishes ever, which was actually created in the state of Rhode Island. And the clams that we use for this are either called little necks or cherry stones. So let's jump in and get started. I just want to go over something very important before we actually go over the ingredients for today's dish. When it comes to dealing with clams, you'll always want to make sure that they're still alive, right up to the point that you stop preparing them. The reason being, or else they can spoil. You could tell when a clam spoils is once you open up the shell, it's going to have a pretty nasty odor. A fresh, good clam should have a natural, like an ocean smell. Now another thing when it comes to clams is that you don't want to put them in fresh water. You could put them in fresh water or give them a rinse or put them on ice for maybe a couple of minutes before you're actually going to start working with them. But you don't want to store them for a long period of time in fresh water. This will kill off your clam. So with that being said, let's go over the ingredients. So in the front we have our clam little necks, and I got about a dozen here, maybe 10. Then next to that on the left we have some butter, and then behind that we have some grated Parmesan cheese, and then next to that we have some garlic powder, and then some onion powder. And one of my favorite all-time seafood seasonings is called Old Bay. And then next to that we have some Italian-style breadcrumbs. And then next to that we have some panko breadcrumbs. And then last but not least, we have some sliced American cheese. And then beneath that we have some bacon. Now here's our clams. So the first thing we have to do is start to shuck them. Shuck them is opening up the clam, which is something I am not great doing. I'll be truthfully honest, I actually kind of suck at it. A clam knife could help you with this. It's kind of a dull knife, but it works great for opening up clams because that's what it's made for. But I'm using a paring knife. Now, if you store them on ice for about 10 minutes or in the freezer for about 10 minutes, it can help open up that shell a bit, as we see right here. And we're just going to work that blade around. Just be very careful. I'm actually doing this very poorly. Warning, never go in from the back hinge. So again, putting them on top of the ice for about an hour is a great way to help. Now another indication that your clam's spoiled is if the shell did open up a bit. It should be nice and tight. So now we're going to work this around, and we want to get the juices inside, and we want to save those. We want to keep those inside the clam. That's going to give it great flavor. So we want to make it where we scrape all the inside of the clam onto one part of the shell and then discard the other part, just as we see right here. So again, we're going to open up this one if I can. And I do have the habit of, once I do open the clam, I do tend to smell it to see what it smells like. And like I said, if it has like a strong odor, discard it. And again, we want to be so careful to preserve those juices inside. So now I just sped up the camera here a bit. And basically we just want to be careful doing this not to cut yourself. And then I'm placing those on a plate. Okay, now the hot pot's over, and I did discard about 1 or 2 clams. I don't like the smell of them. Alright, now it's time for us to put together the topping. First goes in the Italian fine breadcrumbs, and I did actually use a little too much. You don't need a lot because these clams are small, and you're only putting a fine layer on the top. And then in goes some panko breadcrumbs. This is actually the first time I'm using panko. I figured I'd just mix it up a bit. The final result was not even really that noticeable. Panko really shines in deep fried foods. Now in goes some garlic powder. And then next we're going to add some onion powder to this. Gives it a nice flavor. And In my opinion, you always want to use powder, not the salts, because it could come out way too salty. These clams came out of the salty sea, so you don't really have to add any salt. Now we're going to add some Old Bay seasoning to this. Old Bay seasonings is one of the oldest seasonings ever, and it's excellent in seafood dishes. The amount that I'm using right here that we're looking at is probably good for up to like 30 clams. I'm only making about 8. Now I melted some butter on the stove. You could even melt it in the microwave, and we're going to add that to the overall blend. And now we're going to give this a nice stir and incorporate it well. Now some people, when they make this, they add like diced up vegetables like peppers, onion, tomatoes, so on and so forth, but I like it the old-fashioned traditional way. This here way you really taste the clam. And another myth is many people will claim don't ever add Parmesan cheese to seafood. Okay, so we're going to add our Parmesan cheese now to our seafood. Let me tell you something, if it wasn't for Parmesan cheese, I don't think I would enjoy clam sauces. I wouldn't enjoy this as much. Grated cheese and seafood is excellent. You know, depending on what kind of seafood it is. I don't recommend it for lobster. But for dishes like this, it is fantastic. And then we're going to add some lemon juice. And now we are going to give this a nice stir and get everything well blended. Now back to what I said about lobster and Parmesan cheese. It depends on what kind of dish I'm making with the lobster. And this goes with any seafood. If it's like a pasta dish, a casserole, yes, then I would use Parmesan cheese. And we eat 40% with our eyes. So if something looks good, it usually makes it taste a lot better. So we're going to give it some color with some dried parsley. Major food companies, their marketing scheme is making that box look pretty. Let's face it, we all go food shopping, and we usually pick out the food that's not in the white plain box. Some people do, some people don't. But I'm just saying, the image of food is really important. Now for this part, I'd like to dedicate this to my late Uncle Joe, who was my dad's brother. He was a fantastic guy and an awesome cook. And we had a party one night, and he took over Clam Casinos. These things were so good. I'm like, Uncle Joe, these things are some of the best clam casinos I ever had. And he told me what he used. And I'm going to share that with you guys today. So think about it. What's one of the best tasting pasta sauce ever if you like seafood? Clam sauce or zupas, right? Clams and tomato sauce is a marriage. It really works well together. So he puts a little bit of tomato sauce in each one of these clams before adding the topping. By just getting a teaspoon and plopping in a little bit of tomato sauce right from the can onto each clam, as we see right here, but I'm not using the tomato sauce because I didn't happen to have any. So you want to make sure if you're going to do this that you use a tomato sauce that's plain, like Hunt's. You don't want to use meat flavored tomato sauce because you're using it on clams or seafood. It just has to be, like I said, a plain tomato sauce. And man, was it good. And I wanted to dedicate that to my Uncle Joe. So now it's time to put this all together. So with the teaspoon, I'm going to put an amount of the stuff in here right on top of the clam, just like this. You could get a towel or a piece of paper towel and put it underneath the clams on top of the dish, and it will stop the clams from moving around. And again, I'm going to speed up the video right here. And of course, we're going to keep doing this until every clam has the topping on it. Okay, I think that's enough. We get the idea. Okay, next it's time to cut up bacon and cheese. And all we're going to do with this is we're going to cut them into small little squares. 90% of the clam casino recipes that you look up, they usually top it with bacon and cheese or bacon. It really adds nice chemistry of flavors when it's added to the clam casino. Because as it all cooks and bakes, the oils are going to release and it's going to drip down into that stuffing and the clam. Boy, is it good. Now the bacon could be a little more difficult to cut up. Kitchen shears works good here. You know, if you have a pair of those, or a clean pair of kitchen scissors. But I'm just using a knife, and a knife works well too. And again, we're going to cut this up into little squares. You could also get the bacon, the strip of the bacon, and just fold it over a couple of times and just cut it down that way. That's actually what I should have done. But then I ended up going for the kitchen shears. Okay, I think we get the idea now. We can move on. Now, in the meantime, you could preheat your oven now on about 360 degrees Fahrenheit. And now all that's left is to add the cheese and the bacon now to the clams. Ray, where'd you go? Okay, all that's left now is to add the cheese and the bacon to the clams. Hello? Come on, man, these people don't have all day. Let's get going here. Alright, here we are. Okay, so again, very easy, very simple, self-explanatory. So first goes on the cheese, and then after the cheese, obviously, the bacon. Well, that was pretty cool. And now the bacon. If you like to use more bacon, just cut bigger pieces. It's totally up to you. I'm going to speed this up a bit. Alright, and there we are, folks. There's our clam casinos all assembled. Except for one last thing. I'm going to dust the top with a little bit of paprika. Paprika does add nice color to the food, but it also has a nice flavor too. It's kind of like an earthy, robust flavor. And there we have it. I have it on a small cookie sheet here, or a flat sheet pan, and I lined it with some aluminum foil just to make the cleanup a little bit easier. And like I says, I'm cooking it in an oven on 360 Fahrenheit. And I'm going to cook these for about 20 to 25 minutes. Because we also want the bacon on the top to kind of crisp up a bit. But you don't want to overcook your clams because they're going to come out chewy and pretty much as the consistency of like rubber. And also for the bacon, you're not looking for that crispy bacon like you have with eggs in the morning. You know, you don't want to cook it quite that well done. Just go by the color and the way that it looks. The cool thing about clams is that they don't even have to be cooked, like in other words, as far as making you sick or anything like that. Of course, raw clams can carry bacteria a lot easier than cooked clams can. But, I mean, many people used to eat clams raw, right out of the shell, like we see with oysters. As long as you could trust the waters that they came from. And here we are, folks. Here's the final dish. Boy, they look good. I feel like having some right now. Now, I served mine with some hot sauce and some fresh cut up lemon. Now, the hot sauce, I didn't have any bottled hot sauce at the time I made this video, but I found these packets from a Chinese restaurant in my refrigerator, and it worked out fine. Most restaurants in Rhode Island would always have a bottle of Tabasco sauce available on the table and all that. For these clam casinos and other dishes. I think that these are becoming more popular, and they're offered in most states now, I think, in the United States, and maybe even other countries. So if you are a seafood and clam lover, I recommend definitely making these. They go great on the holidays or any day. And I thank you folks again for stopping by and watching the Ocean State Cuisine. Feel free to sub up for more awesome videos coming your way, and it also supports the channel's growth. Comment down below because I love to hear from you. And I'm also curious if your area has clam casinos on the menu. So please comment that below and the location. And until the next time, you guys have yourself a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.